On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Nick Osen to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Osen lives a sports fan's dream, covering Wisconsin and Iowa State athletics as beat reporter for CBS 24/7 Sport. Nick's journey began at UW-Madison and skyrocketed after an internship at ESPN's Pardon the Interruption. But behind the headlines, Nick has battled OCD, anxiety, and depression since childhood. With support from loved ones, he's learned to manage his mental health and today is thriving both on and off the field. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are or whatever you are doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast on Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791, the podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects, such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Episode, guest, and intro. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Nick?
We'll see about that here and there a little bit.
We'll see about that. Well, I don't need Google. I don't need the internet. I don't need Alexa. In my house, I have my wife, and she's always right. According to an AI, artificial intelligence overview from the internet, a significant number of people do not work in their childhood dream jobs. Studies indicate that only a small percentage, ranging from 8% to 15% of Americans, are currently working in their dream careers. This suggests that the vast majority of people either pursue different career paths or remain in roles that don't fully align with their aspirations. Today, I welcome Nick Osen to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Raised in Waunakee, Wisconsin, Nick attended Waunakee High School and is a proud warrior where he was involved in numerous activities. After high school, Nick would take his talents to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he earned a degree in communications and minored in African American Studies and Spanish. He's used his love of sports to do some really cool things for a young man his age. Today, I'm so glad you could join us, Nick Osen. What is up?
Coach Deco, thank you so much for having me. You know, we've been trying to make this happen for a while. Obviously, like you talked about a little bit of sports there. That kept me busy throughout much of the spring. But here, beautiful early start. We're ready to make it happen.
Yes, we are. I do want to share with you, just as I was reading, and I told you we're going to share a little banter right now. But I don't know if I'll talk about this later on, but I went to University of Wisconsin-Platteville. Mm-hmm. And again, kind of like you, I loved sports and I loved the newspaper. I loved reading box scores and the different things in the paper. And I started school at Platteville, and somebody forgot to tap me on the shoulder and said, if you want to go into journalism, Tim, you need to be good in English. And I sucked at English. So I went with a backup plan, and you're going to talk about a little backup plan here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I went the backup plan, which was Phi-Ed. I loved my Phi-Ed teachers, and hence I became a Phi-Ed teacher. The Kentucky Derby was yesterday. Are you a fan of the ponies?
I am. I had it on. I was, with some friends. It was on in the background. I think a pretty good race. And I believe, as you'll touch on a little bit too, I think one of the favorites, won. I think there were top 2 or 3 in odds.
Yeah, Sovereignty was one, and then Journalism was the Journalism had the best odds, mm-hmm. and that horse came in second place. But it really, for my love of horses, started with the puppies. We had a greyhound dog racing track in the Dells where I grew up, mm-hmm. and then when I went to Platteville, Dubuque used to have a dog racing track, and it was big in Phoenix and Florida. And to be quite honest, I don't even know if the puppies run anymore. I don't know if PETA shut that down, but greyhound racing was big. Spring and summer are right around the corner. Besides work stuff that's keeping you busy, what are you looking forward to this spring and summer?
This is definitely one of the best times of the year. I think I'll tease this a little bit. I think it's going to be a big summer for me relationship-wise, hopefully taking that next step with a long-term partner. So that's exciting. Going to try to get, some quality time and memories in with the friends, family. And I know you said besides work stuff, but I do have a couple fun kind of work/fun hybrid trips, going to watch some big AAU tournaments, checking out new states in the South. So it should be a really good few months.
Yeah. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. So our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Do you cook?
I do a little bit. I'm not going to say all the time, but here and there.
What are your favorite things to either cook or slap on the grill?
I make a really good chicken parm. I will say that. Good with pastas, which are pretty easy, and then a couple nice breakfast meals as well.
Yeah, we're doing a little pasta tonight. Yeah. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back. With locations, the home office in Sun Prairie, Monona is not very far from here, Wanakee and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County area, which is Madison, Wisconsin area, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. This is where I do a little drum roll. Have you been to Buck and Honey's before?
I actually have. I'm not just saying that. We probably go at least once every month and a half. It is one of my favorite places in the area.
What is your favorite choice on the menu? Do you have a favorite choice?
I do. You've got to get the pizza. I love a good pepperoni pizza there. And then my girlfriend and I both really love one of their desserts, the creme brulee. I think it's a little bit underrated.
Okay. Well, most of the people, unless you're on Spotify watching, couldn't see me fist pump. But when you said pizza, the owner, Tom Anderson's dad, is from the Dells, and that's where I'm from. And his dad had a restaurant, and I used to frequent his dad's restaurant. And I think it's the same recipe I've heard for the Bomber Special. And Tom Anderson's dad's nickname is Bomber. So Bomber Special, I've been eating that since 1984, probably when you were about 9 or 10 years old.
It's a great choice, though.
Yeah, absolutely. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like. So we'll talk a little bit about Nick's history and what happened to get him on the show or the podcast. In segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and then get into what it's like now. And we discuss Nick's 5 suggestions for thriving. Segment 1, you grew up in Wanakee, Wisconsin, the only Wanakee in the world. What was life like growing up for you in the only Wanakee in the world?
Honestly, Coach, I loved it. You talked about before being a proud Wanakee warrior. I really am. I think it was a really good balance. You're obviously not too far from a great city like Madison. You've got some really good teachers and things growing up, and I'm not just saying that. Athletics, huge. As we know, we both are very diehard sports fans, and I was fortunate. I went to Prairie and lived just like a block and a half from there, so often could walk to school. My mom would pick me up at times and playing, really sports and pretty into academics since I was 4 or 5 years old. So I can't really think of too many better spots to have been than Wanakee that early.
Well, I think you were on the one side of probably closer to Main Street of Prairie Elementary, and I was just below the sledding hill, so we were probably not very far away. I always say that all the cool kids went to Prairie because that's where my 2 younger kids went. But hey, we had Heritage and we had Arboretum, so all the cool kids went to Wanakee. Tell our listeners about your family growing up, mom, dad, and then you've got your younger brother, and then you've got some step brothers and sisters, so rattle them off.
Yeah, so pretty loaded family, I would say. Really, really close family. Parents got divorced when I was like 4 or 5, but still cool to this day. So I got my mom, my dad, both have remarried. So I had a stepdad then, Bill, growing up with us. So it was my brother Noah. He and I are very close. And then we had Maggie, Mac, and Kana. I think you probably taught or coached a bunch of them. I know you coached Kana in football. So we're kind of the closest, and then a couple other older sisters. Mamina and Takina as well. So it was a packed house, 7 kids, a couple parents there. And then my dad, he generally lived in like the Madison area as well. No new kind of step siblings on that side, but I actually live a little bit closer to him now. So getting to see him a little bit more. And like I said, I mean, not too much is more important to me than work, which we'll touch on, but family is number one, and I'll always stick with that for sure.
Family, the Wisconsin Badgers, the Bucks, the Brewers, and maybe a little religion in there.
Absolutely.
You have a special friend who was one of my favorite students. So talk about your special friend.
Yeah, so special friend, my long-term girlfriend, Vivi, we have been together, just hit, unbelievably 8 years. So obviously it's about time I, kind of make the next jump, but we're both on the younger side. Her especially was also a star student at Wanakee and went on to Edgewood. So we were both going to school in Madison. She really liked her time there. I will say this too. I've got great things to say about Wisconsin, but Edgewood College is a beautiful spot. And if you can go there, that's another great one. She's moved around the country with me for the sports stuff, and now we're both back in the area, and she is actually in kind of the, I would say, counseling / educational field as well, working in Sun Prairie.
Sure. I think I did see that on. I'm a follower of both you and her, so it's nice to see. I'm glad I jumped on Facebook when I did about, I think it was 2016, because it's really hard to keep track of everybody once they leave. And I don't know what it was like to be a teacher back in the maybe 90s and 2000s when you retire and there's no Facebook. Kids leave, they're a part of your life for 4 years in high school, and then you don't see them anymore. So at least with Facebook, I get to keep up on the Joneses and everybody else. So Wanakee class of 2014, you're a proud warrior. You were in many extracurricular activities besides sports, because we're going to talk sports, but besides sports, I always like to find out, peel the onion back and what's underneath, what's behind. What are you most proud of other than the sports stuff? And you kind of already touched on it a little bit, but I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, academics, quite honestly. I'm not sure how often, people might say that these days with kind of the way the world has changed, but there was a semester or two that, I got, I think, six A pluses, and I was bummed when I got an A. So I was pretty proud of that. Obviously, put a lot of time into that. Great education system, as we know. And then, as I think we'll touch on a little bit more, I actually tried a couple different things in my last 2 years. Somebody that I know we're both very cool with, Larry Hale, I got to give him a shout out. Yep. He helped me really start a kind of like leading / diversity type club. So that was something that meant a lot to me. And then I also branched out a little bit, me and a couple of good friends, my senior year doing like I think I did men's choir, tennis, a cappella, and the musical that year too.
Yeah, you really kind of branched out. It's funny that you mentioned that because the seat that you're in right now, and because he's such a great guest, and he was so much fun to talk to, is Brady Ewing from the fullback for the Badgers was sitting in your same spot a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about kind of that same thing. I would have thought that this guy had to be just into his football and basketball and athletics, but it was really cool to hear that during the basketball season he would finish basketball practice, grab a bologna sandwich out of his bag, and walk to the other end of the high school, and he would be in the musical.
That's awesome. So, that is awesome.
To find kids that do multiple things in a big school like Wanakee doesn't exist as much anymore. So you were not the norm jumping in some of those things. I appreciate that. After high school, you attend the University of Wisconsin-Madison. What was the lure there?
So this is kind of cool. It was, we talk about kind of goals, and we'll get further into that. So I'll never forget, my mom, of course, amazing person. She encouraged me to have other choices and things, and I've got nothing bad to say about any school, So the first couple schools I got into were Carthage College and Drake in Iowa. Actually, great athletics now too, and I considered that. But I'll never forget, we were actually down in South Bend, Notre Dame, with some family friends, and I finally heard back from Wisconsin that I got accepted. I ran down the stairs. I actually was so excited. I slipped on the floor to tell my parents who I was with. So once that happened and you just kind of felt that in your heart, like there was no question that was my dream school, as we'll touch on it. It's close. It's a top 25 school in the country. When you combine campus, academics, obviously sports, it's got to be top 10 to 15.
Big 10.
Yeah, Big 10. Obviously, I could, afford it a little better with the in-state education too. So it hit on just about all the boxes, and obviously was tough to turn down.
I can't keep my mind or my comment off of you slipping and falling. And did someone say, down goes Frazier or safe?
Down goes Frazier would have been pretty accurate. They were actually just standing at the island laughing, and then I popped back up, told them the news, and it was a celebratory day for sure.
Stuck the landing.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your bio, you sent me, and you already touched on this a little bit, so we can go a little deeper here. During high school, you started a diversity club, and this is, I don't know if I look at this as kind of an interesting or a little poke or whatever it is. I think it's just interesting and kind of a little humorous. At one time, it seemed like I was the only diversity in the community of Wanakee. But as time has evolved and Wanakee has grown, the diversity has gotten much better in Wanakee. Tell us about the club you started.
Yeah, so I mentioned Mr. Hale. He took us probably like 10, 15, maybe 20 students to just like a local speaker. I think that would have been my junior year. And I was just quite honestly really, impressed and inspired. I think that, like you mentioned in Wanakee, I was probably brought to seeing and embracing and loving diversity a little bit earlier than most, at 5 or 6, because I had, then 5 step siblings from India in my house. So that was obviously different and something that was, incredible to me very early. And it just felt like, even though, like you kind of made that comment, there wasn't the most diversity, there was obviously some, and it felt like it didn't kind of seem like there was a huge focus in terms of bringing people in and really kind of building that community. And so myself and a few other students just kind of worked on it for probably a good month or two during that summer ahead of my senior year. We were able to put it together. And I think at least as of 18, 20 months ago, it's still rolling over there. The name has changed a couple times to the Justice League, I know. But it's something really important. And I was happy to see that that's still a real thing. And I can honestly say, I know that it gave many people a better spot to just feel comfortable and build things together.
I think with my connection still with the school, and I'm in there, and we talked a little bit about that off air, that I still work for the district and work in the community. I think it would be good to get you back and bring you back to where it kind of all started. And you were one of the first people to get that group going. So I think we can maybe get you back somehow.
Absolutely.
So academics and sports are a high priority in Wanakee, and you've talked about that. We both know that. For you, it may have started out that way, but that wasn't going to totally define you as being just a athlete your senior year. And you've touched on this already, but I want to maybe delve into a little bit. You joined the musical, and you talked about other things. Let's just talk about the musical. What was that like?
That was probably 3 of the best months of my life. It was something I was totally new to. When parents take you to different things when you're 4, 5, 6, obviously those things are kind of forgotten 10, 11 years later. So I had not been a part of anything like it. The show was 42nd Street. It's a bunch of students that I was like cool with, I maybe had English with or classes with, but maybe not some of your closest friends at the time. And I definitely got cooler with people. I got a decent role. It was like the second biggest male role. So that was really fun, and just the constant kind of daily grind, like a practice of coming in, you're memorizing the lines, you're practicing them, you're using props, you're kind of invoking the crowd a little bit. It was really cool. And if I'm being honest, it's something that I have never fully lost the passion for. I mean, even though my job's a little too demanding right now for something like it, back in Connecticut during COVID, which I'm sure we'll get into, it was actually something I continued to follow a little bit. So, credit to them and Wanakee for allowing it. I think Braun was big in that, if I remember correctly. And just a really, really fun last 3 or 4 months to wrap up my career at Wanakee.
And I think if you've spent some time behind the mic, on TV, on air, I gotta think that probably helped you. You maybe didn't realize it back your senior year that, hey, I might need to be able to engage an audience or to tell a story, but here you are now, and you're able to be very comfortable in front of the mic.
I love that point. That's actually something that I've never even thought about. I think that's a really good connective piece, and it'd be hard to disagree. I think it's something that I've become a lot more comfortable throughout the years.
So you attend, there's a lure to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We talked about the Big Ten, Division I college athletics, one of the better schools in the country, if not the world. So we're going to go back in time a little bit. During college, you land some internships that would start to lead you in the direction of sports communication. What was that like? What were some of the internships that started to kind of drop out of the air for you?
Yeah, so the first one was a paid opportunity with iHeartRadio. Another Want to Key person helped play a big part in that at times when I was there. Tim Scott. Yeah, so he played a big role. And then the two really sports focused, I would say, the next 2 years. I think somebody we probably both like. I think everybody loves this guy, Mike Jocko. At NBC 15. So I got to work for him with the summer.
By the way, I might need you to rattle Jocko's cage because he's been a guest. Then we've talked already a little bit. And he said, I gotta do your show. So I might have you rattle his cage.
Absolutely. No, we're friends to this day. Really cool character. So that was awesome to get to see a little bit more of the experience behind the camera as well as in front for him. And I got to do some practice stand-ups and things. And then I also had done ESPN Madison, which was really cool just because it kind of invoked personality, marketing, sports, community. And that was actually one of the most meaningful ones to me, which I think, whether we talk about advice later or just my path, probably helped as much as anything at that time. And it was really cool. There was a summer, Deco, this won't surprise you, I don't think, but I was serving tables at Lone Girl. Yep. I was moving furniture at Wanakee Furniture and then doing that internship just to kind of keep up on things and get through school and stuff. But it was really cool.
I hate to say this, but as impressive as that sounds, 3 jobs, and people are listening and going, dang, 3 jobs for a college kid? That was how the Dells kids grew up. That was how I grew up, was you had 2 jobs and then maybe 3 jobs. But no, I can understand that pull for your time. But at the same time, you're probably sticking some dough in your pocket.
Yeah.
Then you get a big break. And you already mentioned the ESPN. So as a sports guy, you're a sports guy. You're working at ESPN. If I were you, I would want to work at ESPN, have that on my resume, but just to be able to say that just for a sports guy. But PTI comes calling, and PTI is, for those of you that don't know ESPN, PTI is called Pardon the Interruption. It's a talk show. Tell us about how that kind of all came about.
So this was one of those times where you maybe experience a little failure or disappointment, and then it leads to future success. So this would have been in 2019. The previous 2 years, I had applied for an internship with Around the Horn. Obviously, a similar show. It's like a lead-in to PTI, yep. ESPN. I was a finalist both years, but I just couldn't quite get over that hump. So I stopped applying to that one. But I'm like, all right, I'm not going to give up on this dream as we talk about. So I tried for PTI, which I can honestly say was my favorite. I just hadn't really known so much about it. This is not maybe the best advice piece, but I want to say the application was due March 2nd. I waited until, I think it was the last day of February and then March 1st to turn it in. But I've realized throughout time, I actually think a little bit better just in the moment when there is kind of some of that pressure and adrenaline. I get a chance at an over-the-phone interview. I do think communication is something that I've gotten pretty used to, so that went well. You got to wait like 7, 8, 9 days, which isn't terrible, but you're thinking about it. And then that would have been early April. I'll never forget. I got the call. I got it. I celebrated a nice dinner with Vivi, and that was easily the most meaningful internship I've gotten.
Did you run down the stairs and tell Vivi that, hey, I got it, and then go down and slide and fall?
This time I made sure there were no stairs. I used the elevator to get down.
You use the elevator. We're going to touch on that a little bit more in segment 2 because there's some other tie-ins with that that I think you mentioned in your bio. So we're going to come back to that a little bit. But because our listeners want to hear how this turns out and what life has been like for you so far, I think it's been really cool. I need to talk about our sponsor one more time. Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask me why Buck and Honeys owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many people or how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honeys does. An internship at PTI, Pardon the Interruption, on ESPN, propels Nick Osen in a professional direction that ends up landing him his dream job or jobs. In segment 2, you'll hear what or how that all came about. So I want you to please stay tuned. Don't change that dial. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim DeCora. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Nick Osen is here today to share his story about what led to a life in sports and the strategies he used to cope. He hopes his story will help others who might be in a similar situation survive and thrive just like he has so far in his young life. Since the show has a mental health component to it, you shared in your bio that you suffered from anxiety since a young age, and it still creeps in once in a while. And you've also had a couple of bouts of depression that have caused some struggles for you at times. However, you haven't let that define you. Let's talk about the anxiety first. Usually when we talk about people and the anxiety that they want to talk about, they talk about maybe some of the symptoms first, when they started to notice something, if they've got some kind of diagnosis, how you got through. So let's kind of start out with, kind of in the beginning. When did you start to notice something didn't feel right?
Yeah. So I think, again, as I've said a couple times, a lot of credit to my mom. I can't think of really a better human that could have looked out for me and obviously helped raise me, because something was off. If I'm being honest, it started when I was like 6 or 7, but when I can really remember that type of thing and feeling it and speaking with like a psychologist, that type of thing was like 12 or 13. And I liked your lead in because I do want to make clear that, based on the few episodes that I've listened to or followed along, like many people have had it worse or have dealt with different things. So I wanted to make sure to kind of say, like you said, it hasn't defined me, but it would also be false and a lie if I said that it's not something I've dealt with. I mean, there was a time, I'm very confident in myself at this point, so I'll be straight up. There was about a 6-7 month period, sort of in mid high school. I was diagnosed with 3 things: OCD, general anxiety disorder, and depression. And fortunately, so I'll just kind of touch on it all together. OCD was just something I think I was just able to control. And depression was something, there were a couple scary times, and it does still creep back in, but it's something that I know many have it worse. Now, anxiety is something that I'm still dealing with every day, as I know that you would understand and we've talked about. So it got probably the worst when I was mid to late high school. And for me, it was just consistent. You doubt yourself. You don't believe in yourself. And then constant reassurance is what it was for me. Like basically I would doubt kind of belief in me. I would doubt how people thought of me. How does my family feel about me? Mom, is this good? You know, hey bro, like, what did you think about this? Was this okay? Like to levels that if people didn't care or didn't listen enough, they'd probably be like, dude, what's going on? Like you just asked about that type of thing. But as you know, with what we've talked about a little bit, it's something you can't control. Like you feel like, oh my God, my world's going to end if I don't spit out this question or double back and check on this. And so it was a time, I think I was 17, because that was the worst, 17 to 19. So I was taking like some medication for it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you've seen this over the years. And I know even people that follow me for my sports know that I think my personality is something I do love about myself. I think it's vibrant and sincere to people. And it kind of mellowed me out. And I didn't like that. So I was just like, okay, this is going to be a battle without it. You know, I can still talk to my family and friends and girlfriend when she eventually came in the picture. And I still was going to a psychologist for a few years into college. I just couldn't get mellowed out by the medication. So I just kind of pushed that aside. And then it was like another level of adversity came because this psychologist that I was going to since I was like 10 or 11 decided to, you know, kind of retire and move into something else. So it was like another shift, and I just never got kind of that click or connection from the first person. And, you know, I appreciate that you're giving me a little longer on this because I did want to kind of lead it and be accurate. I think a perfect picture of this was it would have been my freshman year, and I just was social and welcoming and connecting and wanted to be friends with as many people as you could. You know, college is like a fresh slate, and many were not as, I'd say, welcoming or receptive to some of that energy.
Those are a couple good words.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's when I kind of knew, and we'll touch on advice and doubters later. That's when I kind of started to have the confidence that I've had the last few years. Like, man, if you can't listen to somebody and just try to learn from them and want to welcome them in or understand where they're coming from, those people really aren't worth your time. And so even to this day, I would say my anxiety it comes in different ways. You know, I'd probably say it's mellowed out for sure. So I've worked my way through it a lot, and sports success has helped with that. But it's like, are you doing enough in sports? Are you saying the right things? And with relationships, I'm so close with my family. I think it comes in the form of like worrying that something happens to them. You know, when I was out in ESPN, I lost both my grandparents in a very short span. So it's like I'm always checking in with my family because I fear the day that I don't have some of those people.
Well, I mean, those were all roller coaster of emotions as I'm listening, because I was a guy that would, growing up in high school, I needed to have some reassurance. Am I playing hard enough? What else do I need to do? And loved the roar of the crowd and wanted to have teachers like me and fellow students. So it was really important to me. So you hit on that. And then when you run into somebody that, hey, it's not like high school anymore and it's a little bit different out there, then you got to find those coping strategies that everybody needs for their toolbox. And if you don't have that, then you're gonna struggle a little bit. You're here today to talk about the struggle, which you just did, but then you're also here to give somebody some hope or some strategies that you used to get you through these tough times. And they can, if they don't go to a therapist or a counselor like you have or myself, can they listen to a podcast? And Nick Osen, this guy from ESPN, talks about his depression and anxiety, and here's what he did. So during those times of mental struggle, either with some anxiety or some depression, what coping strategies were you using during that time, if you can remember?
Yeah.
To get through?
So I would say kind of the toughest times was just a bunch of, I guess I'm going into the second question a bit too, but it answers both. A bunch of leaning on your people. And at those times, I have to give credit to my brother, who noticed some things very early on, as well as, my parents and my loved ones. But I'll talk about even current times. Now it has just really become and I think you've talked about this, I've seen tweets or posts, like once you acknowledge it and you know that's what it is, then you're kind of comfortable in that, and you just are able to know, okay, that's the, you know, anxiety old friend trying to jump in, and you just got to kind of leave him by yourself, keep on moving, keep pushing. You know, I do to this day wish sometimes I'd be a little bit more comfortable or at ease, just like sitting on the couch for a couple hours. But like I tell my friends, I tell Vivi, like, I don't remember the last night I had a night like that, just because it helps me to stay busy, keep things going. You know, we're sitting here doing this on a weekend, and I've got kind of a full day of getting outside and some work and trying new food. So that all helps me. But overall, I think just if you've got a core support system and just belief in yourself, I know that it's oversimplified, but I can honestly say that's what it's been the last 6-7 years, because I don't speak to anybody professionally or, you know, take medication, things like that. Like, and it's felt good. I really do, as you can see, you know, feel good and happy and light on my feet with those things.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did you start to notice any change in your demeanor once you started to reach out, or maybe you listened to your brother and your brother pointed out, hey, you got this kind of going on, and I'm noticing this. Let's talk about it. So it sounds like your demeanor started to change a little bit.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah, I would say initially it did. It felt like sadness levels and overthinking were quite high my last semester of high school. There was like won't go into too many details, but one of the two like scariest nights that I've ever had mentally happened around that time. And so I remember, my brother, and then, you know, a former coach at Wanakee actually kind of helped me through some of that, as well as, of course, my parents and family, because then after that, you know, in terms of demeanor, I think you feel like, man, you hear about these stories, you know, you don't want something bad to happen. How do you kind of acknowledge it? But then once you do it, it is a legitimate like weight off your shoulders. And I think then it goes from acknowledging to kind of building and growing with how you can succeed. And obviously we've both been able to, you know, learn and do things like that. Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought up common denominator that you just talked about was coaches. And I had a lot of coaches that I could lean on. And my parents weren't great role models for me, and they weren't always in my life. So I always had coaches that I think it's important, whether you have family or someone to lean on, siblings, aunts or uncles, community members. You just got to find somebody to lean on, and finding people to lean on is kind of like dating. Some people you can lean on, but hey, they're not giving you what you need. So you got to just kind of, you know, go around and move around. We're going to go back to the PTI stuff because I can't get that out of my mind. And the one thing you sent me was that you were one of 3 to land a role with Pardon the Interruption among 700 to 800 applicants. And again, in my notes here, wow, you know, how did that happen? And I think that's an accomplishment in itself. Here is your coping strategy that you're, you know, I'm not going to tell you how to cope, but it's got one built in here that if you are going through a tough time, anxiety, depression, look at this accomplishment. It's really pretty cool, but I'm going to shut my big yapper and let you talk about how you landed that role out of a lot of people.
No, you're great with that. And, you know, I will say, I do think, just to kind of add on to that, part of why I did have so much kind of passion and enthusiasm for this chase is because of, you know, some of what I was dealing with, but also if I could just note this as we lead in, because it is part of what I had done, you know, I'll never forget, I just kind of shut out some of the disrespect or unwelcoming things from like people. I remember at Og Hall, and then one of the coolest things was a night I interviewed LeBron, and his like answer was a headline on Sports Center. And some of those same people, once, you know, they saw that and I came back, you know, then it was, oh, that was so cool. How did you do that? So I don't like, you know, kind of fakeness and people jumping in when things are hot and things like that. So how did that occur with PTI? I think I'll admit I didn't get some of those same grades at Madison that I got at Wanakee, because I was so into just chasing like these work opportunities and doing these different things. So I got that. because what they do is it's cool. You do get to share a little bit of your voice. I remember there was like a question about Shohei Ohtani that I thought I answered really well just because I had my eyes on him for a long time. And then it was just part of what you'll hear more from me in the advice later is I just had a bunch of different things. Like I haven't even mentioned before that I had some time with State Journal, NBC 15, student radio, student TV. So like I think it was very well versed. And when you put all those things together, I do think the ESPN little title helped, even though it was just a short internship. Then yeah, I was able to land it. And that was, I would probably agree, one of the larger kind of lands to this day.
I think you're laying down tracks as you're going along. You talked about Channel 15. You talked about the State Journal. Those are all places that have helped you to get you to where you are today. Certainly having PTI on your resume, I think, is huge. Make sure you keep that on there. But currently, you're the beat writer at 24/7 Sports. Tell our listeners kind of a little bit about what that is and what you're doing there now.
Honestly, I'm a partner with CBS Sports. And so obviously it's not maybe quite the four letters of ESPN, but like it is a national company that I'm very fortunate to be just one of 2 or 3 people that gets to cover Wisconsin for it. And obviously Wisconsin's a huge brand. And so what I do is, we've run into each other at games. So the games part are obvious. You go to the games, you write about them, talk about them, go to the pressers. But what's really cool and a part that I didn't know how I would feel about 247 and recruiting is I've actually fallen in love with covering it. You basically get to talk with these young athletes and they get these scholarship offers. They're going through recruiting processes. They go on visits. One of my favorite parts has been going out to different parts of the country, like Colorado, South Dakota. I went to New Mexico to cover some of these targets, these recruits, these athletes, as you know what that process is like. And so a lot of that is kind of my breaking news type aspect. There's a little bit of a podcast focus. I get to do some national videos. I actually just did one this week. And, it's taken on a special, I think, feel. Like I was at Iowa State doing this before this, 2 of the best years of my life, and I'm very fortunate. And I think it just takes on a little bit more of a feel when you're back at your alma mater. You've got people that or grew up with, like reading your work. It is very cool. Like obviously I followed Greg Gard from afar, and now I get to go to his press conferences, was just at the Guarding Against Cancer. He's so impressive. So I think a lot of that has been just really fulfilling.
This is where the subscribers and followers and listeners take out the notebooks and pens or pencils, and they're going to jot some things down. Here are Nick's suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive while landing in his dream profession. Maybe not his dream job. Let's actually go back for a second. What is your dream job? Do you have a dream job?
It's a great question. I never have, other than being an NBA player, I never had the dream job. I did have a dream field, and that was coming into sports media, which I've done. And my 2 biggest goals in that, if I'm being honest with you, my friend, were interviewing LeBron. I was fortunate to do that, make that happen at 19, and then getting to ESPN. I did that right after college. So otherwise, I'm just kind of embracing the daily grind and trying to be the best at what I can. Do I think this is my last stop at 28, 29 years old? I don't, but I love it right now, and I'm trying to be the best within it.
Coach Bo Ryan was my guest for the first 8 or 9 episodes of Survive and Thrive 87, 91. And I did ask him about what were his goals, and he had goals, but they were always short-term goals because he was working hard, busting his rear end on where he was right now. And he couldn't really worry about the future because if you don't worry about the here and now, you're not going to get the future. So he was always in the present and in the present moment. And I thought, that kind of sounds like you a little bit.
The same. It really is.
It's a great, get some great advice. So again, we're going to go back to the Nick's 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive. And I'm going to toss these in softball style. Have you played softball before?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good. I had a gal on here a couple of episodes ago, and she had never hit a softball. So I said, can I roll it in kickball style? She said, yeah. So I'm going to toss these in on her hand, and I'm going to say, go ahead and hit that. And I'll say, let's go about 2 minutes on each of these. Kind of a little take on PTI. We'll give you 120 seconds. Here's what you shared. Number one, try not to say no to too many opportunities and give things a try. Go ahead and hit that.
That was, arguably maybe some of the biggest advice on this entire thing as I look at this list. As I mentioned, and I thought about my sports stuff, but it can match really any goals that people have. I don't think that I would have thought about the musical much, right? Mm-hmm. Or doing the student TV, because I was always a little bit more comfortable behind the camera, or then radio. Wow, I have my own show type of thing. But every single thing I swear has helped me. I went into college thinking I'd be a social work major for part of that time. And I think that has helped me. That's only further opened up my heart and trying to help people and things like that. So that's kind of what that one means. As long as you're not kind of hurting yourself, stretching yourself too thin, if you can try out an opportunity, I say go for it.
And when you're young, you can do that. Number two, always keep your goals in mind, but also don't be afraid if they shift at times. Go ahead and hit that.
I never wanted to really work in production. We went from kind of the PTI to a little bit more now, and in between I was a production assistant and content associate at ESPN, at the mothership out east in Connecticut. I was working on Sports Center, and although I never wanted to kind of fully go down the producer path, there is not a doubt in my mind that those were two of the best years of my life. You create lifelong relationships. You learn what it's like to kind of work on deadline. You can make different types of connections. And so even though it wasn't my full goal to be in that, I just wanted to get in the door at ESPN, I thought about it. And those times were just so fulfilling, memorable. Honestly, making live TV is a pretty beautiful thing. And so as long as you're not fully kind of giving up on your things, but it's somewhere in your head, I think that's really good. And, I smile saying it because sometimes I still can't believe I used to help kind of write and make videos for SportsCenter.
Maybe someday you'll be in the producer's chair or the director's chair. Number three, outwork everybody. Go ahead and hit that.
So this is probably the one that applies to me most right now. And I think, again, regardless of who's listening, this could apply to being the best dad, brother, friend, working on mental health, anything. I will say to this day, I don't think that I'm the best long-form writer in the world. I think there are probably, though I've come a long way, maybe some people a little bit better at video work, people that played sports further than I did, though I played through 17, 18 years old, but not like college. But one thing I do always kind of fall back on and trust is my work ethic. This isn't a healthy thing, and I will be changing this eventually, but I have not taken a day off in 2.5 years. Not a single one. Before this show today, I wrote a story. I've got some interviews lined up to do later. And that's why I also say I'm fortunate to have the support system, because I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but when it is fulfilling your heart and you feel like you can chase it and you can still balance some family time, loved ones, and taking decent care of yourself, I'm all about it. And it does help because I do love my field and most of my job.
Well, I'm going to add a little something here that I feel very fortunate to have you here, though we don't live very far from each other, to have you come in, in the middle of your day where you're working and you're grinding. I'm glad you could come in here, but I think you being here, and I wanted you to be on the podcast because you've got some things to share that I really hold near and dear to my heart, and to know that you've had some struggles, but I see you thriving. Now you have that gift of being able to give to other people, and I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Number
4, remember who is important in your life. Keep a good core, and you've mentioned that good core quite a bit, so go ahead and hit that.
I've been really consistent with this, just because even though I say how much the job is important to me and I would do just about anything for it. The one thing, the 6, 7, 8 people, super close loved ones, siblings, parents in that core, I'd give anything up for them. So basically, you know, people, and I'll even put this with a second thing because it is remembering who is important in your life. You know, I want to break the news. I want to cover the games well. I want to be on all these shows, but people will forget some of those things at some point. And, you know, you can't replace the loved ones that you have super close to you. So that is why, you know, I was working at a local coffee shop kind of near us recently, and my mom was back up in the area. I'm like, yeah, sure. Come by for lunch. I can show you where I kind of work on slower days, and we'll make sure to take a couple pictures, because you can't replace, you can't kind of forget about those people. And why would I want to? Because not only do there's a difference here. Not only do I love most of my family, but all of my family, but I really like them as well. I like how they are. You know, we have a lot in common. We are funny. We create memories together, and I wouldn't be close to where I am without them.
I just listened to a book I just finished a book yesterday, Logic, and I'm a huge rap fan, but I'm an old school rap guy, Tupac and Biggie. But Logic, I listened to his book, and he really said something cool in his book about, I can make more money, and this is when he retired. I can make more money, but the one thing I can't do is I can't make time. So he decided to retire and started spending time with his family. He still does some producing, but I really think that's cool, is that you can't make time. So you might as well spend it with those loved ones like you talked about. Number 5, stay true to yourself. The last one, hit that.
Yeah, so I do think, you know, there was a time where when some of those people at Og Hall, I remember distinctly, weren't so cool. You know, I really could have retaliated, and when I was making some of these cool dreams happen, like, have kind of come back at them, treated them how they kind of were. And, you know, it's happened throughout my media career a few times, if I'm being quite honest, but I just have never taken that bait. You know, I have told my own boss, I've told peers, friends, you know, I've told friends that I will quit this business if I ever have to kind of sell my soul to be successful, because especially in today's day and age, I do think it's so important to just stay true and lift other people up. You know, my favorite thing in the world, more than job, family, sports, fantasy football, is really just being able to give people a smile. I truly mean that. I was able to just do that with some new people I met over the weekend, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So I don't care if I, you know, stay at this level or end up at a national scale at some point. Like, I've told my mom and others, if you ever see, you know, Nick Osen not being the same type of person, that's when you need to check in, because I don't think that I'll ever let myself be different.
I think that's some great advice too, just about anybody dealing with a loved one, colleague, friend, whatever. If they aren't acting normal, start asking some questions. Are you okay, etc. What a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you've thrived after some struggles early in life is inspiring. And I tell a lot of people that come on, but I truly mean it. Your story reminds us all to have some coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when something like anxiety, depression, people, negativity enter your life. And despite what has happened in your young life, you haven't let that define you or slow you down. You're grinding. You've survived and thrived. Our call to action, Nick Osen just shared a story on what it's like to land his dream, not necessarily dream job, but his dream profession so far. He leaned on family. He's pursued his passions and is moving and enjoying life. Here are Nick's 5 suggestions that have helped him survive and thrive. Number 1, try not to say no to too many opportunities. Give things a try. Number 2, always keep your goals in mind. Don't be afraid if they shift at times. Number 3, outwork everybody. I like that one. Number 4, remember who is important in your life and keep a good core. And number 5, stay true to yourself. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Nick?
I would just say, you know, quite honestly, I was looking forward to doing this. That's why we've been working to make it happen. And it was even more fun and fulfilling than I might have anticipated. So I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful to keep chatting about Badgers and things outside of this. And thanks to people that follow my work, but also your listeners, because this was really kind of fun and cathartic. And I look forward to following and seeing the responses.
Yeah, it's reciprocal. I can't wait to see what Nick Osen is like in his late 30s and late 40s, and hopefully one day, and I don't know if this is the way you want to go, but I can tell my grandkids, hey, you see that guy Nick Osen up on ESPN? He was in Grandpa's basement one time. So that'll be kind of cool to see where you land. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Bucket Honey's remote studios who will share how they learned to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share, someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.